Good morning. Welcome to our webinar this morning, Incredible Rail Journeys, Part 2. And if I didn't say good morning, Gail. I just see you popped in this morning. Nice to see you. Please bear with me and we'll get started right away. Yeah, today's program is all about traveling by train in Africa. But for those of you who are new, let me give you the brief synopsis of what Wheel and Anchor is all about. Our mission, the organization of our community, and we are truly a travel community, is about bringing travelers together. When I say bringing travelers together, it's really about people who have a like-minded view of exploring the world and learning about new cultures and having fun along the way. And you'll see I have a little quip about like-mindedness and what it means in the context of travel for our newsletter this weekend. So tune in for that. And not only bringing you together, but I personally have a goal. It's kind of my life mission of having each one of our members become well-traveled and well-connected. And my version of well-traveled is more than just a bucket list, although I think it's important to have one, but it's all about really connecting with people and cultures in other parts of the world. That's what well-traveled is all about. And along the way, becoming connected to your fellow travelers, people from other parts of the country. We've had so many people make new friendships in participating in our trips, but also with the people that we meet along the way. And the more that we experience folks from other parts of the world, the greater the understanding. And I think we indirectly make the world a better place to live in. So let me introduce you then, without further ado, to our team this morning. So my name's Gordon, the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I think most of you are familiar to me. And I'm joined by my colleagues, Joel Curry and Paula, who are in the background and helping me to moderate this program and answer questions as we go along. And our special guest this morning, I am very pleased and honored to bring you Alicia Taljaard, who is coming to us all the way from South Africa. Alicia, I actually forgot to ask, are you in Pretoria or are you in Cape Town right now?
Pretoria.
In Pretoria, okay. So that makes sense because that's the head office of Rovos. And so Alicia has taken the time to join us. She is a veteran of Rovos Rail, who is a partner of mine, and I've worked with them for many years, and she's going to share with us some of these incredible experiences that they offer on their trips through southern part of Africa. So the plan today, as per usual, you guys are all interested, all of our members are here to find out about some of the most incredible train journeys in the world, and these ones definitely rank high at the top of my list. I am an absolute train lover. As I shared the last time, I used to have model trains growing up as a kid, and I would always plead with my parents to stop at the railroad crossing so I could watch the train go by. And that love for trains has never faded away. In fact, it's even greater than it ever was. And we are going to take a journey with Rovos Rail through a couple of different routes that they offer and understand a little bit more about what rail travel in this part of Africa is all about. So on that note, it's Rovos Rail. So some of you may have heard of it or not. And Rovos has really quite an interesting history. It's not a super long history, but it's a family-owned company. Rohan Boss and his family started it. And well, Alicia, I'm going to really sort of pass the baton to you because you obviously are part of the organization, part of the team. How did it all come to be? How did Rohan come up with this idea to start a train company?
Well, initially trains was only a hobby to him. Rohan has always been into all things mechanical, and it was about 1985 he was invited to join in or assist with a steam restoration project. His interest quickly grew, and it wasn't long before he found himself attending an auction to buy a carriage or two for himself. And the idea was to create a family caravan, maximum 4 carriages that he would hook onto the back of a standard South African Railways train, and they would tour the country as a family. He soon realized, however, that working with the SA Transport Administration was very difficult and complicated, so he wanted to be more self-sufficient. and that led him to buying his first locomotive. And then he applied for permission to run his own private little train. And to everyone's surprise, he actually got permission, but the cost was exuberant. And the idea of a family caravan soon faded. When he objected the charge of the railways, they actually were the ones that came back and said, you know, why don't you sell tickets? And that's how Rovos was born. So the name Rovos from Rohan Vos. And we've never looked back since. And it was 29th of April, 1989 that the very first trip took off.
And the very first trip, so the map here is where the routes that Rovos does today. And so, you know, back then it was, the first route was just that tiny little piece between Pretoria, which you'll sort of see in the, just below the middle of the screen, you see Pretoria, the capital of South Africa, and basically Kruger Park, yeah?
Yes, the Pretoria up to Malalaan, that was the first stretch. And that very first trip only took off with 4 paying passengers, friends, and press, essentially. Can you imagine?
And from there, expanded all over South Africa. And I know that for a time, it was sort of, the main route was the Pretoria Cape Town route, I guess,
yes.
which was sort of following in the footsteps, if you will, if I can put it that way, of the famous Blue Train. And people ask me all the time, because, you know, the Blue Train has quite a long history in South Africa. And then here comes Rovos, and essentially comes up with a competing product. I'm curious, what in just a few short words, because, you know, that I'm sure some of our members will have that question. The Blue Train, Rovos, what, you know, what's the difference? What's the same?
Well, both are fabulous products. The Blue Train, to me, all these years, essentially before COVID, the Blue Train was more focused on a business style traveler. It had only one journey, 24 hours in length. They have all the modern additions like television sets and Wi-Fi, where Rovos definitely harks more to a bygone era, more Edwardian in style. Our journeys, that really sets us apart is the amount of, or the various different journeys that we have on offer. And our shortest trip is 2 nights in length. So I would say we're definitely more focused on the traditional leisure traveler coming to visit South Africa from a tourist perspective.
Right, and that's exactly how I saw it as well. I mean, the Blue Train is like a commuter train, like you're kind of in a hurry to go from one place to the other and you don't want to fly. Whereas Rovos is an experience in itself. And although today we're going to be talking about just 2 of the routes that they do up to the north into you know, Angola and Tanzania and Zimbabwe and all these other countries, there are lots of other programs, and I've had the pleasure of doing one myself, although it was about 17 years ago, and it is one of the most memorable rail trips that I ever took, and I'll share a little bit with you about that in just a moment. We're gonna spend a few minutes talking about the train, because on some rail journeys, it is about the destination, and here it's no different. It is undoubtedly the landscapes, the scenery, the experiences that you have on Rovos are obviously like no other in the world, but the train itself is also like no other in the world. They bill themselves as the most luxurious train journey in the world. Isn't that right, Alicia? Or at least
that is correct. Yes.
And I haven't been on all of the most luxurious train journeys in the world, but I tell you, I don't know how it could get better than this. So let's have a quick look at the train. Describe the experience on board, and we've got a few pictures here that depict what the actual carriages look like and so on. But yeah, give us an overview of what it's like to take Rovos.
My fondest memory of a description of Rovos used to be with Peter Winterbottom, who was the train manager on one of the trains. And he described it as bringing back the art of good conversation and serious drinking. But that's what it's all about. We don't have those modern additions of television or Wi-Fi. Actually, mobile devices are banned from all public areas unless it's a Kindle that you're reading from. but we really encourage people to meet the people around them. So this lounge area is essentially the perfect spot for those pre-dinner drinks. We have our afternoon teas there with cake and biscuits. So you just relax, watch the scenery roll by. We're traveling at a very slow pace. It's maximum 60 kilometers, which I think is about 40, 45 miles an hour.
It's okay, we use kilometers in Canada too.
Oh, good. Great.
And
so yeah.
And so just to describe the amenities, so for those that joined last week for our Trans-Siberian program, and the trains, you don't have a lot of sort of entertainment or amenity areas because you spend a lot of time off the train. And with Rovos, it's the opposite. The amount of space that you have, considering that you're confined to a train, the number of carriages is remarkable. There's so many wonderful places, as you say, to hang out and have a chit chat while you're watching the African scenery go by. It's remarkable. Now, the dining on board, and I said at the outset, one of my favorite things about South Africa, which comes to some people's sort of surprise, is food and cuisine. The South Africans are incredible at hospitality and amazing food. And on Rovos, it's no different. Alicia, tell us about the amazing cuisine that you get on board Rovos.
Well, we do offer quite an international cuisine, but that South African flavor is in each and every dish. So you'll have the opportunity to experience some of those local venison dishes, ostrich or crocodile salad for a starter, but you also have your traditional meals. It's all 4-course meals for lunch and dinner, paired with excellent South African wines. And of course, all those wines are included. All drinks on board the train are part of the package. So it really just is an exceptional experience. And of course, we have that beautiful formal dress code in the evenings just to add to the elegant atmosphere.
Yeah, and that's an important point. And, and it's sometimes, people wonder a bit, you're going to Africa, you think about safari and casual, but it is dining in the evening is formal. So gentlemen with a jacket and women are asked to dress with, sort of appropriate, formal attire. And it's part of the experience. And again, if you think back to the old movies about traveling through Africa and on safari, and all these people in their top hats and coats and so on and so forth. And so Rovos has to retain that by having this requirement. And I think it just adds to it. It might mean you have to bring a little more luggage with you, but that's not usually a problem.
No, and we do have some theme nights as well in between, so guests don't have to worry about dressing formal every night on board the train.
Yeah, exactly. And my favorite part of the car of the train is the observation car and the bar car, which is sometimes one and the same, usually towards the back of the train. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. And this is definitely the most popular spot, especially after dinners, when the cocktails come out and the music starts playing. That it's a very social atmosphere here. Instead of having sectional seating, all the seats are on the side of the carriages, so to open conversation with everybody. There's lovely board games, card games available. And as you mentioned, that open air balcony at the back, which is perfect for a sundowner at the end of the day and ideal for photographers wanting an uninterrupted view.
And so this part here is the one memory that I have. Well, I have many memories from being on Rovos, but it was being up late one night. I'm standing at the bar, which is just in front of this, and look, having a lovely glass of whiskey and having a chat with the bartender. Was a young chap, and hearing all about the stories of South Africa, and literally with the back open out into the sort of the African wilderness. And it's one of those memories in travel that you just don't forget, and something very, very special about Rovos, that they have these kind of carriages that carry all this charm and enable that environment of really interacting with the other members. Now, this is another great thing. So the compartments on board, so give us an overview of some of these compartments.
Okay, well, we have three suite categories on board. The photograph we're seeing now is our entry-level suite, the Pullman Gold. Some that might have looked at our website before would have noticed bunk bed or a bunk that folds out when it comes to the Pullman suite. We've taken the time during COVID to actually refurbish most of our carriages, and for our long journeys, we've introduced this Pullman Gold category, which is ideal as it offers a fixed double or twin bed option. The overall room size is about 7 square meters. But it is ensuite with a toilet, shower, and basin. You have all the conveniences of, you can see there's plenty of space to unpack in the bathroom, and in the room there's half-length cupboards and 3 drawers. Plenty of space to put your luggage underneath the beds, as well as the luggage rack at the top. There's tea drawers. Of course, we have a butler service, which makes sure guests are well taken care of. So here you can see it's a smallish shower with a basin and a toilet, but more than you need for a trip like this. You're not going to be spending your time in your room all the time.
Exactly. And as you said, this is the entry level. And, you know, as soon as you bump up a level, you get all this extra space. And so this is really like traveling, in the, ultra deluxe back in the early part of the 20th century when these how old are these carriages originally, actually? Because they've all been refurbished, but they're quite historical now.
Yeah, most of them date from the 1950s. So I would say more recently we've gotten from the 60s and 70s, but a majority of our carriages are from the 1950s, and some are from the old NRZ, the Zimbabwean railways, Rhodesian railways back then. You will actually still see the double R on some of the windows, and guests think it's from Rovos Rail, but it's actually Rhodesian railways.
Remarkable. And that's the part that I love is that the history has been brought forward, and they've been incredibly, meticulously restored so that you have that feeling. And so when you decide to travel in these larger suites, it's really truly such a luxury to be able to have all this extra space. You can have a little cocktail party in your room on a train. And I think that's, in my view, compared to any other train journey in the world, what makes Rovos quite unique is that you have really ample private space, and it makes for such an incredible journey. We'll just look at one more category, the Royal Suite. I mean, you imagine this. I mean, that's bigger than most hotel rooms in France, in Paris.
Yeah, indeed. And each of the rooms are named after something historical in South Africa. So there's a little plaque that you can read up about the history. So each suite comes with a story of its own.
And you mentioned that, the suites have a mini bar in them that is stocked up, right? With
Correct, yes. Mini bars, tea and coffee drawers. And as I said, if you run out, you can just telephone your hostess and she'll come running with some more. So we do have that butler service. Yeah, and you can imagine traveling through the African countryside in a bubble bath with a glass of bubbly in hand. I mean, that is something spectacular.
The ultimate in rail travel. So if you ever hear about somebody referring to Rovos as the most luxurious train journey in the world, now you know why. You can see the pictures here. An amazing experience. Describe for us, Alicia, a typical day on board, because I think one question that people often ask me is about sleeping on the train. So we'll start with night, because I think having just looked at the compartments, they're very comfy. But what happens at night?
Well, on most of our itineraries, we try to schedule it in such a way that the train is stationary between midnight and about 5 o'clock in the morning. So even those guests that don't sleep well on a moving train do have some stationary sleep time en route. That just ensures that everybody gets a good night's rest. But of course, after a few drinks in the bar car, most people sleep like a baby. I personally prefer to fall asleep while the train is rocking because it just absolutely sets me asleep.
Yeah, a nice glass of whiskey or champagne, as you say, and then you're lulled to sleep by the movement of the train. But I must admit, true, I'm somebody that doesn't generally sleep quite as well on trains, but it is lovely pleasure that you, as you say, routinely are stationary at night, which means that you are pretty much insured to have, you know, several hours of good solid sleep. But you know, in the morning, take us through the day. You know, you wake up, you go for breakfast, and obviously, so the difference here on Rovos is that with the itineraries, some days can be super busy, but in some cases, you're on the train the whole day.
Yes. So on an excursion day, for instance, we would generally enjoy breakfast and then disembark the train around 9 or 10 in the morning. Enjoy an off-train excursion, come back for lunch, and then have a leisurely afternoon on board the train into the evening. On some days, we might have 2 excursions, then we would do the same in the morning, but disembark again at about 2:33 in the afternoon. But on those full days, that's where our onboard historian, Nicholas Schofield, really shines. He will captivate the audience with his incredible lectures on the history and the culture and the areas that we're traveling through. For those less interested in that, we have a hairstylist on board, so you can use the time for some pampering. But if you're like me, then you'll end up in the bar car, finishing a few bottles of sparkling wine and beating somebody at Scrabble.
Yeah, a lot of reference to alcohol on this train.
It's included, and we're South Africans. We're known for our drinking.
Well, and we're Canadians, and I know that most of us do enjoy a fine glass of whatever may be, and it's hard to find finer, and so yeah, it's a wonderful way to spend the day. So the experience really is, in this case, you know, almost like sort of a luxury cruise or river cruise type thing, in the sense that you have a nice mix of time spending enjoying the amenities on board, but also lots of activities, lots of things to keep us busy. We're going to talk about 2 programs today, 2 itineraries, and these are 2 of Rovos' more exotic programs that's why I thought I would include these ones today, because these are marvelous sojourns through countries and countryside that frankly there is no other practical way to see. And so the first one we're going to talk about is the route that goes from Cape Town, obviously very down at the southernmost part of South Africa, all the way up to Dar es Salaam, which is of course the capital of Tanzania in East Africa. And so, you know, Alicia, you're going to help me go through some of the highlights that we would see on board this particular trip. So there's the map, you can see it. And if you can picture the whole continent of Africa, you know, we're covering more than a third of the entire continent on this rail journey, and with all kinds of interesting stops. And how many countries do we go through on this one? 5 countries, if I'm not mistaken. 5 countries, yeah. 5 countries. So, you know, talk about, you know, checking off that bucket list. We see a lot along the way. Starting in Cape Town, and it was mentioned by a couple of our members at the outset as a favorite place to see. If you haven't been, Cape Town is as magical, as inspiring as you see in the photo here, you know, with Table Mountain obviously being the landmark. It's an amazing city. Beaches, the water's bone-chilling cold, I must say. I remember one of my first trips down there, and you know, it looks very inviting, but it's a little chilly for swimming. But apart from that, you know, they have an incredible waterfront area with shops and galleries and museums and all kinds of stuff. And for most people, Cape Town is all about Table Mountain and taking that famous cable car ride up to the top, where you have an incredible view over the city and as well as over the 12 Apostle Mountains and that whole southern area. From Cape Town, you know, typically what we would do is probably with any trip that we would run, we would come into Cape Town a couple of days early so that you can take in some of the incredible sites there, like of course the Cape of Good Hope, which is not the southernmost point of Africa, but it is the most important or the most well-known. How would you describe the Cape of Good Hope? What's the name for it, Alicia, in terms of
I believe that's where the two oceans come together.
That's right.
So
it's where the two oceans come together. That's what it is. It's yeah, the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean come together, and of course Nelson Mandela and Robben Island, not to mention the whole wine country of Stellenbosch and Franschhoek and all these wonderful towns. I spent one time 2 weeks in Cape Town over Christmas, and truly savored this wonderful place. So it's a great way to start the journey. And our train heads out of Cape Town, goes north. And this part of the journey I didn't do when I was there before. So tell us a little bit about this little village of Matjiesfontein.
Well, our first stop, as you say, Matjiesfontein. It's the quaintest, cutest little Victorian village nestled in the Karoo. It's an 800-meter strip of road, a beautiful museum on the platform, and 2 transport museums. But the best part, because we arrived there about 6 in the afternoon, just the right time for a sundowner. Again, I keep bringing this up. There's a lovely bar in the hotel, and there's a piano player. And the piano player turns out to be the mayor. And if you're lucky, he takes you on a tour in his double-decker London bus that's parked outside, and you get a full tour of this 800-meter strip of road and the history of the area.
Fantastic. One of the quirks of these of these little towns in South Africa. From there, you know, we see something completely different, which is this gigantic hole.
Yes, no, the largest man-made hole in Kimberley's diamond mines. Unfortunately, no longer being mined, but there's a beautiful museum. We'll do a little city tour through Kimberley and then stop at the museum where they take you through the entire process of the mining there's a little video from where the very first diamond was found in the rough to how they now dig them and mine them out. And then you get to walk through an incredible vault that actually shows pieces of the final product. So it's just an incredible journey that you take through.
And it's not something you often see. I mean, because South Africa still, I mean, diamond mining is a very, very important industry, one of the most important resource industries in South Africa. So there's not many places in the world where you can have really quite that expose on the process of extracting and refining diamonds. So from there we head further north, and I see we do make a stop in Pretoria on the way, right? Which is,
yes, we'll take you through our station and tell you a bit more about the history and through the workshops that we have there. But it's just a short stop before we continue on to MADIKWE Game Reserve, which is the perfect spot. It has the Big Five, on top of being in the 5th largest in South Africa, but it's very well known for its wild dog and cheetah projects where they've actually released them back into the wild there, and they're now flourishing. So really great experience for the guests up close. The lodge where we're staying, every room has a waterfront view. So even if you don't feel like going out on a game drive on the day, you can just sit back on your patio, and the animals actually come to you.
And so that's an important point, because I think that on these longer journeys, much like on some of the other rail journeys that we have talked about, this is one of the nights that we go off train. So we we'll have spent a night on the train, and now we have a chance to check into a beautiful game lodge. So it is a bit of a combo between just a rail journey, but also a safari, because we'll stay in a place and hopefully see some of these Big Five. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's 2 nights that you have there. There's 4 opportunities for game drives during our stay. So plenty of opportunity to go and find the animal that you're interested in. And yeah, we seat guests that each of you have a side view, so nobody's in the middle seat. And the game ranges, so small groups maximum, it's usually 6, maximum 7 guests per vehicle. And the game rangers really make an extra effort to show you what you're looking for. So if you're a keen birder, we try to group the birders together, and they'll focus on that. If you really want to see those lions, they'll make sure that you do.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I've only had great experience with game, with the guides in South Africa, so I am confident it'll be no different here. Our train lumbers on north and makes its way up to Victoria Falls, which of course is on the border between Zimbabwe and Zambia. And this again is, you know, so many highlights on this trip, but Victoria Falls, and you know, I've been to most of the major waterfalls around the world, but I will never forget Victoria Falls. You know, there's so many different activities, so many ways to take in this magnificent, and the pictures almost do it justice, because it's a huge chasm that stretches for an incredible distance, where the waterfall goes along. So tell us again a little bit about the stay in Victoria Falls, because once again, we're off train for the evening.
Yes. So for both the off-train experiences, we supply guests with a little overnight tug bag. So it's important to note that you only have to take the essentials. Your main luggage will stay on the train. The hotel where we're staying is only 100 meters from the train station. So it's a short walk, and we'll enjoy lunch at the hotel before departing on a Sunset River cruise. A lovely cruise experience. You usually get to see the elephants taking a bath late in the afternoon. Again, with some drinks and snacks included. And then the next day, you'll have a full day at leisure to enjoy a variety of optional activities, including helicopter flights over the falls, elephant interactions, or walk with the lions, where you can ask our historian to take you on a guided tour of the falls, as there's many different viewpoints that you can explore.
Exactly. And I recall my own visit to there. I spent a couple of nights at Victoria Falls, and I couldn't possibly do all the activities. That sunset cruise is on the Zambezi River is truly lovely. It's far from the waterfalls, so you don't have to worry about going over. But you really get a sense of the different landscape here, the vast plains that you have that surround this area, that are again full of wildlife and so on. And but of course, it's all about the waterfalls themselves here. Yeah, and then the next morning, you were saying, I think that the train stops on the bridge, just like you see in the fixed photo here, yeah?
Yes, it's the following afternoon, around 4 o'clock we'll depart, and then the train is stationary on the bridge for a brief period. We take you out to a viewpoint, and you actually get to get a picture of the train. So it's a very unique experience, that's for sure.
Yeah, terrific. And then so we wind our way up through Zimbabwe at this point, passing sort of through towns and villages and all the rest of it. It's Zimbabwe that we're going through, or is it Zambia?
At this point, we'll be in Zambia.
At this point, we'll be in Zambia, yeah.
On the train, the border crossings are so seamless, you hardly know you've crossed the country. That's another big bonus point. We take your passport and take care of everything. So unless the officials really insist on seeing you that day, you might not even know that we've crossed the border.
Compared to somehow how you normally cross the border in Africa, that is an absolute treat.
Yes, no, definitely. But yeah, Chisimba falls in Zambia at Kasama, so it's almost the northern part of Zambia. It's 3 consecutive waterfalls, a very spiritual area, very important area for the local tribes there. And the great thing is that no matter what your mobility, everybody gets to see these falls. We set up a lovely drinks table again next to the river, and then those that are more adventurous can climb down to this viewpoint at the bottom of the falls. So it's just an amazing bushwalk and experience, and you get to meet you are guided by local guides there as well from the area, and they'll tell you more about their history and the culture. Yeah, so really spectacular.
Really, really spectacular. And so as we head then out of Zambia, continuing up to the north, we then head into the Great Rift Valley. And I know from having not been in this part of it, been other parts of the Rift Valley, this is one of the most significant sort of geological formations in all of Africa, quite frankly. How is the landscape changing? What can we expect to see as we enter into the Rift Valley?
Well, as we descend into the Rift Valley, there's usually a ton of switchbacks, tunnels. The greenery is exceptional. Lots of hills and turns. It's definitely great for photographs because the train will be switching through these switchbacks, and the photographs from the rear end of the train at that observation car is just spectacular, as you can see here. So no staging required. The photos shots will just come into your camera's view every now and then.
They'll just magically appear constantly as we go on. So yeah, so beautiful country, and this is the benefit again of traveling overland by train is that we go through so many different you know, climactic zones and geological zones. You know, we go from the Great Plains and, you know, in some cases through the jungles and then into the Rift Valley, which is all of these sort of, you know, sloped mountains and hills. It's truly scenery at its absolute best. So as we move our way towards the northernmost terminus of our trip, we'll have another game reserve this time in SELOUS, which is up in Tanzania. And, you know, game reserves in Africa, which is why I was saying at the outset, we'll have to do a forum on safaris, because it's a bit different in East Africa than the safaris that you do in Southern Africa. What's that all about?
Well, the game drive in SELOUS is very different to any game drive that I've really experienced, because in South Africa, you have that up close experience with the animals. The rest of Tanzania, you generally envision those vast open plains of the Masai Mara. But the SELOUS is a bit more of a, I don't want to use the word jungle, but it is a bit more of a jungle atmosphere. The animals are a bit more skittish, but you're getting to see varieties that you don't get to see anywhere else. So these giraffe, for instance, have a very unique pattern. The game drive is also done in a closed vehicle with the pop-top roof, which is a bit different to that you experience in South Africa with the open game drive vehicles. But here we have about a 4 or 5 hour game drive into the wilderness. We set up a refreshment station next to a little lake. The hippos are usually there to greet you. And yeah, that's again a lot of, here you've mostly focused on the giraffes, hippos, lions usually make a scene, but the bird life is exceptional in SELOUS.
The bird life is exceptional in SELOUS, yeah, as well, and absolutely, and the giraffes and so on. So, and that'll be our last game reserve, and then we our train sort of makes its final leg up to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and you know, we will disembark here. This will be the northern end of the trip, and you know, we might spend a day in Dar or a half a day in Dar, taking a look around before traveling onward. But I think that, you know, for most people, if you come up to this part of Africa, and for those who have perhaps traveled in Kenya or in Tanzania, my recommendation is what we would likely do as a post tour is head to Zanzibar, which is, Zanzibar is sort of a semi-autonomous island off the coast of Tanzania, and it is largely an Islamic populated island. A lot of influence from Oman and the Sultan here in Zanzibar. It's known as the Spice Island, and I think it was a trading because of the spices, particularly I believe it's cloves that are made in Zanzibar and exported all over the world. But for most people, they go because the beaches and the water is absolutely spectacular. It's some of the most beautiful turquoise waters. And I recall a trip that I did with a group of people through Africa on safari, and we ended in Zanzibar for 3 days. And it was an incredible ending to the trip because it was relaxing. It was the beach vacation after the, you know, in this case, the very luxurious journey through Africa, but a wonderful way to round out a great trip, and then head home from there. So this is the so-called Cape Town to Dar es Salaam trip, and it's 15 days in duration, on and off the train. Yeah, what is how many days we spend on, how many nights I should say do we spend on the train versus off the train versus staying in resorts?
11 nights on the train, 2 nights at the game lodge, and then 1 night at the Victoria Falls Hotel.
Yeah, perfect.
So 14 nights, yeah.
14 nights, yeah, fantastic. So let's take a moment and talk about our other journey that I wanted to share with you, which is again very unique even to Rovos, because the Copper Trail is a brand new route that you guys just opened up recently. And so what prompted us to go, and let's take a look at the map there. What prompted you guys to all of a sudden try to go, through Angola, which, I think a lot of our members will probably have some, notions about what Angola is in comparison to what it actually is.
Well, if you looked at our early maps that we released on Rovos, it's always had this route dotted in black. So it's always been on Mr. Voss's mind from the very beginning. And in 2019, which also happened to be our 30th anniversary, we had the opportunity to run our very first Trail of Two Oceans journey between Dar es Salaam and Angola. So a lot of hard work went into that. And because it was such a great success, we tried to find a way we can offer more of these trips, because DRC and Angola are really the areas that people want to explore. That's that authentic experience. I see Alina asked there how much interaction there is with the various African tribes. And although those interactions are limited on our other journeys, on this specific routing, that is definitely the highlight that you have, because you're getting so up close with all the local tribes and the local communities. So we decided to do the Copper Trail from the Victoria Falls, as it's much closer to South Africa, to get our train there. And then from there, continue that beautiful copper route, as it's known. That's what it really was built for, is to transport the copper from Zambia out to the ports in Angola.
Out to the ports in Angola. So let's talk a little bit about this trip. And, so as I say, Angola, I remember when I was first in South Africa, which is a long time ago, almost 20 years ago. And we talked a little bit about Angola. And again, many of our members will think about Angola probably in terms of when it was last in the news in any significant way, which is of course when they had civil war there back in the 70s and 80s. Angola is a different place now. And, parts of the country have evolved incredibly fast. It's of course a former Portuguese colony, so there's still a lot of Portuguese influence here. This here is the capital, the city of Luanda. And you can see immediately from this picture, it's probably not what you expected when you think about Angola, a very modern city, very fast growing. It is the place where we would undoubtedly start the trip, because it's the most convenient place to fly to from North America, in all likelihood via Europe to get to Luanda. I haven't been to Luanda personally, but Alicia, give us a flavor about what that city is all about.
Well, it's an incredible combination of history and modernization, if I can say. So we will take you on a city tour, showing you some of the old forts, up to the brand new coin museum that they have there. So there's such a variety of activities available. And contrary to belief, it is quite safe to move around, but we also have such great support from the tourism councils there. And the local communities. Like I said, everybody comes out and works together. But I think the biggest highlight here is the seafood. If you mentioned you love South African food, the Portuguese influence here in Luanda and their seafood is incredible. So the lunches are just to die for.
There you go. See, and the other thing is that, it's one of those things you can tell your neighbors you're off to Angola, which is, again, not something that you hear in everyday conversation, even as a traveler. From Luanda, we hop down by a regional flight to Lobito, which is further down the west coast. And this is the starting point of the train. We'll embark on our wonderful Rovos train that we've already seen a little bit earlier in the presentation, and we'll head off eastbound, heading through Angola. And what can we expect to see along the way? Give us some highlights of some of the stops and how the scenery evolves here.
Well, in Lubito, we start off with quite a dry, arid atmosphere. It's a bit more desert-like. But within the first hour that we travel, you start seeing, like in this picture, these beautiful granite outcrops, which just lines the area outside of Wombo. In Wombo, we'll actually get to see some of the tanks that have been left over from the wartime, and you'll get to visit a local brewery. And then we continue our journey through where it becomes a lot greener, a bit more ravine-like as you're traveling up the escarpments. There's also an area where we actually visit the Kasai River. We'll be crossing on several occasions where you get to see those local fisheries, how they dry the fish and sell the fish. On each and every station, the tribes come and introduce themselves, and they'll do a traditional dance. So it's quite spectacular to see that on route.
And so that's a good point, as you were saying earlier when you were addressing Alina's question. This is really, if one is interested in experiencing more of, the African tribes that are found in Angola, in this part of Africa, this would be the trip for that.
Most definitely. Like I said, and it's truly that authentic experience. We were the first tourists to visit this region when we actually visited in 2019. So the warm welcome that we received was unbelievable. And it would be from the youngest child in the tribe up to the oldest lady, everybody came out, which is such a unique experience. Even if it wasn't a scheduled stop and the train was just passing by, the entire village was lined up to wave for us and do their dances as we passed by.
And so you make a very important point. You were the first tourists to go there, and that was a year ago in 2019. And so this, I think that alone makes the point where you're traveling through a part of Africa that it's not like you could just rent a car and drive around or a Jeep for that matter or anything. You get to see people who have not seen many outside people at all ever. And where else in the world do you have those kind of experiences? I can't think of too many, which is what makes this trip, particularly unique. We keep going east, and then the baobabs.
Oh, they are just, the baobab forests are undescribable. It truly is spectacular. We've all seen baobabs on other safaris, but the forests of baobabs that you see in Angola is very unique and magical, that's for sure.
So baobab trees, for anyone who hasn't been on a safari before, they're sometimes referred to as the upside down tree. And in this particular tree that you see here, it's not as obvious because of all the leaves on it. But when you look at the branches of the tree, it looks like the root system of a tree. And of course, the tree goes from being really thick at the base to being thin at the top. So it literally is kind of like the tree as if it was upside down. And I know myself, I have some amazing pictures of baobabs that I've taken in other parts of Africa. So to see a whole forest of them like this must be a lot of fun.
Yeah. The rest of the tours will be mainly walking tours that we do. Our historian on board will take guests off and really bring to life that historical experience that they could only wonder what happened, but he brings it to life. And then we're into the DRC with their beautiful, lush jungle areas.
And so this is the Democratic Republic. Yeah, this is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So once again, the Congo is not, it's not like it's a huge mass tourism destination. On the contrary, and it's frankly, we even had challenge finding sort of some decent photography about it because just not tons of people go here. So what about the landscape? So this is now where in the Congo, it's more lush, like forest and jungle. Is that?
Yes, now from the train's view, you'll definitely just see green around you. It's quite overgrown, lush green area. And then as we get further on into Kolwezi, it's a complete contrast when we visit the copper mines there. I think this picture depicts it. If you actually stand there and see the vastness of this open copper mine, it's incredible, but then there's not a green leaf in sight. So the trip is very much also about contrasts throughout the trip tour.
And so as we go along, as we make our way all along through, Angola, through the Congo, and continue on into Zambia, we visit all of these villages. And so, as we said a little bit before, some of these people have never hardly seen foreigners before, hardly seen tourists before. What's that like, and what's that like for them? And more importantly, how do the people feel, like the guests on the train, feel about going to these kinds of places?
Oh, they were all overwhelmed because, as I said, all you're greeted with is smiles and waves and, love and welcome. So they felt very privileged to be there, especially as the first tourists. And I suppose, I'm not sure if you saw, there was a little clip on Euro News that actually interviewed a few of our guests. And just those reactions, the smiles on their faces from both sides, the guests and the communities around them, was really unique.
For sure. They got to take part in a very unique moment. A highlight of this trip as well, the real wildlife aspect of it is South Luangwa Park. And we fly in here. So we leave the train for a couple of days, right? We're here for 2 nights in South Luangwa. And this again is another national park that is yet again different from some of the other ones. How so?
Yeah, well, on the Trail of Two Oceans, we spent 2 nights here. On the Copper Trail, we actually have 3 nights.
3 nights.
Yeah. The main attraction of South Luangwa is definitely the walking safaris that they offer. So you're getting that up close experience on foot. And I'd like to emphasize that you don't need to be very mobile to enjoy that. They actually drive you out to an area where where it's secure and safe. But then you take a short walk around away from the vehicle and back to your vehicle. So you don't have to walk for miles on end, but you get to see all the, focus on the botany, on the bird viewing, again, exceptional, and all those little critters that you often miss when you're on a game drive. And then the other aspect that is also very unique is the evening game drives that they often. You get to see the cats. I think each of our groups saw at least a kill, or the wild dog pack hunting. So it's very, very unique experience, those evening game drives.
And
you can't do those in all the parks.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes visiting some of these parks a bit different, because, the big parks, the famous parks of Africa, whether it's, the Krugers and the Masai Maras and so on and so forth, are, they have a lot of tourists in them, which is, not necessarily a bad thing. But let's face it, these national parks here that are much more remote, more difficult to access, just offers you a chance to see a greater, the likelihood of seeing wildlife, which is never a guarantee. But I think that the experience is that you'll have a far greater chance to see some amazing stuff. So it's here that the train now, if it was going up to Dar es Salaam, you'd head to the north, and now it's going to go back to the south. And a couple of interesting stops here. So I remember being at one of these elephant orphanages outside of Nairobi in Kenya. And this is an amazing experience as well.
Oh yes, no, it's such a unique project. The whole idea of the elephant project is that they don't get in. You're not allowed to touch the elephants or interact with them directly, but there's viewing platforms that have been built, because their focus is really on reintroducing these poor baby elephants into the wild. And they've had such great success with this project, because from here in Lalai at Lusaka, where they're currently based, they'll be transferred to the Kafue National Park. And they've just actually had their first birth from one of their baby elephants that have been released into the wild. So from a wild bull, she got her own little baby and is now living and thriving. So it's such a wonderful thing to see the whole process. From where they're taken care of.
Yeah, they can successfully raise these animals and then redeploy them into the wilderness is amazing. And so we'll also stop in Kafue, which is a particularly unique part of Zambia, and take our little Sunset River cruise here.
Yes, no trip in Africa is complete without a river cruise. And this is absolutely beautiful. It's such natural scenery. We actually get to see the bridge built over the river as well. Nice up close view of that. So just another nice sundowner moment.
Yeah, and African sunsets are, hard to beat. I think I can safely say. So the train journey then, after again 15 days of amazing experiences all throughout the western part of southern Africa, ends then in Victoria Falls yet again. So here we would conclude the train part of the trip, and invariably take Victoria Falls in. As I had mentioned on the last segment, it really is one of the amazing wonders of Africa, worth spending some time. And it's likely from here that we'd have a post-tour program talking about safaris out to the Okavango Delta in Botswana. And this is really one of the most amazing places to do safaris, because it's more water-based safaris. You're in like what occurs like a giant marsh or a giant swamp. So a lot of your safaris in the Okavango are done by pontoon-type boats, and you can go and see the hippos and the crocodiles and so on so close, like you can't even imagine. Like a couple of times we pulled up so close to some of these animals that I thought the driver must have had too many drinks on the train or something. But anyway, the Okavango Delta is a wonderful place in Africa, and would make a great post-tour extension to our program. So that wraps up our 2 train journeys for today. I see we had a couple of questions along the way. If any of you have any more questions about traveling on Rovos train on any of the itineraries, and again, there's lots more. You can go to their website, and of course, you're also welcome to ask us about them. I know the question will be, when are we going? And so we brought these programs to you today to give you a sense of what's possible. We are in the process of putting together our trip inspiration survey for 2022. For those of you that joined us more than a year ago, you'll remember we did our trip inspiration survey for 2021, and that helps us to identify the programs that we're going to offer to our members in the upcoming year. And so you'll find at least one, if not both of these programs in there. And if it's the type of thing that would interest you, please let us know. So Helen asked, I think, the obvious question: what's the pricing for these journeys? So these journeys are, they're high-end programs, and so they have a bit of a high-end price tag compared to some of the programs that we offer. The train portion of these trips runs around 16 to 17,000 Canadian dollars per person, based on double occupancy, based on those Pullman Gold suites that you saw on the train there. That is pretty much all inclusive though. So that's all of your meals on the train, all of the wonderful service that you get along the way, all the beverages. So there's not really too much that you have to look after beyond that. So I know that is, as I say, it's not an inexpensive trip, but the bang for your buck, it's like, maybe putting 2 other trips together and taking one of these, because it's worth, I think, every penny. Mike asked the question, what time of the year would be ideal to go? Well, I think, Alicia, these programs aren't offered all year round. In fact, there's only a couple of departures per year. For each of these trips, Cape Town to Dar, what time of the year do you normally operate them? And there's a reason for that you operate them only at one time of the year.
Yeah, well, the Cape Town to Dar es Salaam journeys we offer generally in January, March, and then July and September, October. Each of those have seasonal differences, but the itineraries are the same throughout the year. The Copper Trail and the Trail of Two Oceans in particular, we can only run in the month of July, early August, because the moment the rains start, and they've got very heavy rains in the DRC and Angola, the railway lines become inaccessible for us. So if you're looking at the Cape Town to Dar es Salaam, the main seasonal difference, I would say, January, March, usually very lush green, but also quite wet. July is my favorite time of the year for that trip because it gives you a bit of everything. It's still warm during the day, nice, you can wear your short sleeves, but in the evenings it's slightly cooler, so you don't have that heavy humidity, but the Victoria Falls is still nice and high after the rainy season. But if you get there in September, October, the Victoria Falls is pretty low, and that magnificent scene that we've seen in the photos can reduce to only a few rivulets if it's, you know, the end of October, September season. So those are just the seasonal differences to keep in mind.
Yeah, exactly. And so Marilyn asked a question about the temperature. And of course, this is a bit of a tricky question because it changes as you go from one end of the journey to the other. And so just give us a rough estimate of that. What can we expect on average? And again, it depends on the month. It depends on whether you're in Cape Town or whether you're up in Dar es Salaam.
Well, on all these journeys, even in our winter months in July, South Africa is still, you know, the daytime temperatures are very pleasant. It's 18, 19, 20, maybe 22 degrees Celsius during the day in our coldest winter months. So it's nothing like you would experience in your winter. On the, what do you call it, the Copper Trail journey, Zambia is warm throughout the year, pretty close to the equator, so it's always warm there. But as we travel into Angola and we reach the higher altitudes, it can cool down considerably. So I think the important thing to remember is that it is moderate temperatures throughout the year, but always have a nice weatherproof jacket, because even in our summer months on an open game vehicle, if the wind picks up after a rainstorm, you're going to be chilly. And I know it's not the kind of cold you have in your snow, but it's a different kind of cold that cuts right through you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's all about, you know, the contrast between the pleasant days and, you know, it can get cool, but you can leave the park.
So layers.
Layers is good. Yeah, leave the gloves and parkas at home. Terrific. If you do have any other questions about our programs, please do drop us a note. As always, we love to hear from you. We love to chat about them. If I don't know the answer or if Paula doesn't know the answer, all we have to do is pick up the phone and call Alicia, and we'll have the answer in no time. So our information is there as well as on our website. I think you have it all already. Come join us again 2 weeks from now. We'll be offering our next program, which is unusual river cruises in Southeast Asia. We're going to be talking about the Chindwin. You've probably never heard of it. It's the tributary of the Irrawaddy, which is the largest river in Myanmar. A fascinating journey through, again, a very remote part of a country where you see people that have hardly seen tourists before. We're going to be talking about the Brahmaputra River, which is in the Assam region in the very northeastern part of India. And finally, the Red River, not the one in Saskatchewan, but the one in Vietnam that goes from Ha Long Bay to the interior parts of Vietnam. So we're going to be talking about those unusual river cruises on our next webinar on September the 26th. And Alicia, I want to thank you so much for tuning in and taking your time today all the way from South Africa. It's been a pleasure. You've been marvelous. You've provided a wealth of information. And we're all looking forward to meeting you in person when we come to South Africa on one of these great journeys.
Oh no, thank you, Gordon. It was a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to welcoming you on board.
Yes, well, we look forward to coming on board. The link is there for the next River Cruise webinar in the chat box. And thank you all for joining us today and for sticking with us for just over an hour. So we're pretty much on time, and we'll catch up with you again, if not before, in 2 weeks' time on the 26th of November. And have yourselves a wonderful day.